because I'll upload this for you as a YouTube video when we're finished, but it's recording now. So if you could just share your screen, I just want to look at a couple of your settings, that's all, just as a starting point.
Just a moment. So is it the iRacing view only, or
Yeah,
screen?
just iRacing.
Yeah.
You got it. Your livery looks very cool, obviously.
Thank you.
Right, here we go. Let's look at your stream. Oh yeah, okay, right, so you're in VR. Okay, wow, that looks so cool that you're in VR like that. I don't normally get to see people. I don't think any of my other drivers use VR, so that looks mega. Okay, can you jump out of the car just so you can show me your options screen? Okay, so the things I want to look at for my little checklist are in the options screen itself. We know you're running the data logger, so that's fine. We don't need to worry about your field of view because you're in VR, so that's fine. We don't need to worry about head movement because you're in VR, so again, that's fine. So if you click on options for me, I just want to check pedal pressure, steering angle. I think these things are probably going to be fine. Certainly steering angle, because you're in VR anyway, so it rules out a lot of the problems some people have. But if you just click options for me anyway, I just want to see what happens if you turn your physical steering wheel 90 degrees one side or the other. Yeah, okay, so that's giving you the right amount of angle. You'd know it anyway because it would be weird in VR. And this is just for my own reference. Just press the brake pedal as if you were braking at the end of a straight into a hairpin. Like, just hit the brakes like you normally would.
Oh, I've just bolted down my, did some reinforcements on my seat, so I'm actually able to push quite a lot harder without seat movement. But
yeah, that all looks pretty good. What pedals are you using at the moment?
That's I got a 2-pedal set, Heuskenfeld Sprint.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so you got nice stuff. Okay, that's all good. That's it. That's my checklist. Normally, I'm having to do things related to the field of view and the head movement and stuff, but none of that's an issue. So we can just forget that. So the way these things normally work, the way we normally run these sessions is in the hour before you arrive, I go do a bunch of laps and get myself up to speed and get a feel for the track and the car, so I can give you like the best current information as I see it. And I've done that for this one. The one thing I haven't seen yet is any data from you, because I couldn't find you on Garage 61. But if there is anything now, let's just see if I can grab it.
There's just 20 seconds of me trying to leave a bit.
Yeah, so that's fine. So we won't do any like pre-session data checks from like your pre-session practice because it's just not there. But sometimes we will do that. Now you're on Garage 61, I'll be able to look at that stuff before we meet up, so I'll already have some stuff for you to aim at in your first run. But I'm going into this completely cold on this first one. I've got no idea where you're good, where you can improve, how you drive. I haven't got a clue. So I guess what I should probably do is ask you, is there anything you already know that you struggle with or that you want to do better at? Or is it just like general slight improvement? Like, what is your main aim? I love the look of your car, by the way, man. It looks so cool.
Thank you. So my suspicion is that I'll be I'm a bit too cautious going, especially through corners and corner complexes.
Yep. Okay.
So I think I'll be able to gain a lot of time by having confidence in taking more speed through corners and be more. I think it's especially stability on corner exits.
Okay.
So I have a slight tendency to go a bit too slow at the final part of the corner in order to be stable on the exit and not overdrive the car or get onto the curbs or grass and lose the rear end of the car.
Okay.
And that is my suspicion is based on the fact that when going through or going onto the final straight, usually the start-finish straight, oftentimes I'm not able to catch up sufficiently to the car in front, despite being within 0.3 seconds when going into the corner.
Yeah. Okay.
So I can't really get up to on side of the car I'm pursuing.
Okay.
So I think that is one of the big struggles, and then just overall consistency.
Okay. Cool. Okay. Well, that's a good starting point for me to bear in mind. The data is going to uncover everything. How much do you use motorsport data up until now? Like, how familiar are you with the kind of data traces you're going to see in, we're going to look at today?
I've actually done some. So I listened to all the iRacing podcasts Banners did in the olden days.
Mm-hmm.
So that has given some understanding, and I've watched some of your other students'
Yeah.
video recently. So I know how to decipher the charts more or
Okay.
less. So the question for me would probably be how to implement it,
Yeah.
basically.
No problem. So I'll tell you what then. Let's go gather some information, and then we'll look at it together, decide what the problems are, why they're happening, how you can fix them, and then we'll work on putting those fixes into place so that you always do the improved version of whatever it is. So I'll leave it open ended for the moment, and we'll let the data and and the video that we're about to get, the replay file, we'll let that do its job in showing us the stuff, and then I'll try and give you the best possible tools to do the improvement that you're after. And the good thing is here, you're not just looking for a general improvement. You're actually racing at this track, aren't you? So each
Exactly.
one of these sessions we do, it's not only kind of a generally making EJ a better driver. This is also getting specifically faster at this track and car combination ahead of your race. So it's quite nice to have that specific aim as well. But right, what we need to do, annoyingly, this is a big track for this car. So the number of laps we're going to be able to do will be shorter than on a much shorter track, but it is what it is at Spa. So let's just go out and do how many laps? I gave myself 6 timed laps. So let's go do 6 timed laps, and you can talk to me if you want, or you can completely concentrate. I'll keep quiet unless there's something I really need to tell you. But I'm just going to be sitting here watching, and then we'll dig into it once you've kind of generated that data, and I'll be watching all the way. So let's go do it.
So just a small notice.
Yep.
I'm quite fond of the Super Formula Light
Okay.
compared to this one. So I have a bit of a struggle getting to grips with the car. It's quite easy to save when it's in the slide, but it's also very slidey.
Okay. Yeah, I also like the Super Formula Light. This is the first time I've driven this car in a while. Man, your view looks so good on that VR. Yeah, this is the first time I've driven this car in a while. I noticed you really feel the sidewall of the tyre move in this car in a way that I don't normally notice. So wow, your lighting effects are really cool. You've got your graphics turned up a lot higher than me.
Yeah,
um,
probably also too high, but that's a
there,
different
there's
story.
no Ferris wheel in going through a Rouge for me. It definitely is for you. Yeah, when you turn in, there's some rotation of the car that isn't sliding that I noticed. Like it kind of moves on the sidewall of the tyre. So anyway, we'll talk about that later and talk about if it's an issue or if we can use it to our advantage. I'm going to keep quiet now, just let you get up to speed.
Okay.
Cool, good starting point. Let's go do another 5 of those. If you get 3 more laps in and you're just completely stuck at the same lap time, obviously we don't need to just keep going, but let's see what we do over the next few.
Yep. So one other thing is, I've driven a lot around Spa, so I know this track quite well.
Yeah, okay.
Braking point and whatnot.
Okay, good. Yeah, I mean, it looks really solid so far. So pretty big improvement on that lap, so obviously we'll keep going.
The guy behind has just done a 2:23.3.
Very nice, neat apex.
So I have a suspicion that iRacing in some way or form right now are using the replay settings for the graphics.
Okay.
I was down to going through a roost down to 35 FPS.
Oh, wow. This is exactly what I want to see, EJ. This is really good. Like, you're just getting up to your, up to your pace, the fastest you can get. Now we're obviously making a smaller improvement, but you're still improving. So we'll just keep going until we stop doing that improvement, and then we'll take your best lap from the set and study that. But this is still really good so far.
Thank you.
So let's just do one more after this one.
Got it.
If something goes wrong and you're miles off or something in the first sector, then we can always abandon it. But
Yeah.
that's definitely 3 very consistent laps there. So let's just try one more, and then I think we'll probably say that's quite a good indication of your normal driving.
Yeah, I'm throwing everything away in the bus stop.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, but it's 2/10, so it's okay. We'll be able to see that easily. That's more like it.
yeah, that was pretty
Good
good.
man. Okay, so once you cross the line, just stop anywhere there and hop out of the car, and that'll make the data upload. But it's good, man. Like, you're really not very far off. As in, like, I know it's hard to get the last bit of time, but we're
Yeah.
not going to have to sit here and deal with really basic stuff. I think we're going to be going into some details pretty quickly. If you just hop out of the cockpit, otherwise the data doesn't load to Garage 61. That should just take a minute or so for it to get there, hopefully quicker. So, look what you just did. I mean, straight away, a decent first lap. If we compare that to mine, probably not far off. Yeah, pretty close. Your second lap was quicker than my second lap. And then you went consistent. There was always a bit of time on the table that you just lost in the bus stop, but then you just really nailed it and found even more on the last one. That's a really good first run. I know you say you know Spa, but, you're just coming into this straight out of the pits. That's really like a warm-up run. And you're under a second off of what I did, and I was trying really hard. So let's see where the difference is. Let's see where the details are, and see if we can get into some of this detail. So, let me grab your data. Oh, oh God, my mouse just stopped working. Right, let me grab a spare mouse. Sorry, EJ, my mouse once every month or whatever decides it runs out of battery, and it's just done it. Let me just grab my spare. Sorry about this.
No worries.
I definitely have a spare. Yeah, hang on, 1 sec, EJ. Just hold that thought. Now, where do I plug my spare mouse in? It's one of these. Let's try this. Now I have to find a USB slot in my PC for it to fit into. Let's go there.
Could be worse. It could be a a hardware issue in the computer, really. So,
Right, did that make the mouse work? Nope, so that's a different mouse. One more try. I've got so many peripherals plugged into these two PCs. Let's try this one. Come on, cursor. Are you going to wake up? That's odd. Okay. Sorry, Joe. Let me just... You can just rest for a minute whilst I repair stuff. Ah, right. So that's still... Okay, that mouse is still working on my other PC, so I've definitely not plugged in the correct Logitech dongle, because that is impossible. At least I've narrowed it down to which one it is. So is it this one? Let's try a different slot. Alright, that should. Right, thinks about it. Sorry to keep you waiting, EJ. This is...
no worries.
Bizarre. Why is it not recognising my mouse? Let's try a different place.
It's not the PC that's frozen up.
Sorry, Jake, because I don't have my headphones on. I can't hear you.
Okay.
I can hear you talking. I just can't hear you. Right, I'm going to go try another mouse. I'll be back in 2 secs. I'm going to a different room.
Yep.
I'm going to make this work. I just don't understand why it can't seem to find my mouse. Let's try another slot. There we go. I'm charging the other one whilst I'm doing this. Normally you plug in a dongle and it works just straight away. Okay, we've got it. I have a mouse back. Good. Right. My PC was just being extremely particular about which slot the mouse would work in. Right. Let's download your data now. Okie dokie. Here you are. There's your lap. So because you're so close to my time, the differences should be quite obvious to spot. And I just need to change our colours round so I don't get confused. So I'm going to be blue and you're going to be red. There we go. Okay, so obviously, like I know we already discussed this, you kind of know what you're looking at here with the data. So we're going to just zoom in to where there is time loss, and we won't bother with where there isn't because you're already doing those sections really well. So you're under 9/10 away, certainly from what I did in that run. Doesn't mean I did the most perfect lap ever, but I thought it was good enough that I didn't do any more. So turn 1, you're currently better than me, so we can forget turn 1. By the time you get down into Eau Rouge, you're like 100th or 200ths up on me, so that's good. And actually, by the time we get to the end of the Kemmel Straight, you're only half a tenth down. It's really, really nothing. So this whole section we can basically forget for the moment. But then pretty obviously, when we look at our delta bar down here, can you see my screen, by the way, EJ?
Yeah, might be able to enlarge it. Yeah, great.
Okay,
Full screen.
cool. Yeah, cool. Just checking you can see it. So obviously at the end of the Kemmel Straight here, then we have our first step where if we take it from the entry until the exit is kind of finished, let's say there, we've lost 3-ish tenths. Okay, so 2.5 to 3 tenths. So that's our first place. We'll have a look. We'll come back to that in a minute. Then we've got kind of pretty minor time loss. Quite small steps. You're really not losing massive amount of time. Just like a tenth or so at a time in these little areas here. Until we get to the next set of 90-degree corners, which I think are called the Fanya chicane. I never remember very well. And then from there until we get to the next 90 right, that's another tenth and a half. So these are all little, they're like little chunks that we're going to have to figure out why they're happening and address. Then in that final 90-degree right, we've got that's more significant there. So that's more like a tenth and a half-ish on its own, okay. And then obviously the final corner, the bus stop, even though this was actually a very good bus stop compared to your other ones, again we lose a tenth and a half or so. So we've got several areas where you're not losing a huge amount, but added up over a long lap like Spa, obviously they are adding up to a difference. But let's go for the lowest hanging fruit first, and then we'll go through the lap and see if it's a similar reason or if there's something that we can change here which then affects all of the rest of the corners. So let's start off with this first one. But the first news is it's definitely nothing dramatic. So you're not doing anything wildly wrong. Your minimum speeds aren't all rubbish, and you're not on the wrong lines everywhere. It's not something weird you're doing. This is just standard. You're at a certain level, and we just have to polish it and try and find why it's not quite as good as it could be. Okay, so we'll just do the fundamentals. So into Lecum, and tell me if I get a corner name wrong. I'm sorry. I think I know Spa generally. Into Lecum, you're doing something. I'm talking about small differences here, by the way. So I'm not criticising anything here. This is all completely normal stuff. But I'm going to have to go into little details because you're not losing very much. So let's really do the details. When you lift off the throttle, you lift off a little bit slowly. So when you look at the second channel of data here, your throttle trace goes from 100% to 0% over the course of 2292, 2312. So like 20 meters or something like that. So
20 meters, yeah.
Yeah, so I know you're travelling really fast, so 20 meters is covered very, very quickly. But by comparison, mine is 2315. Mine's more like 7 meters. So there's less time between coming off the pedal or beginning to come off the pedal and it fully being off. Now, that doesn't sound like a very big thing, and it's not a very big thing, but it's the beginning of lots of teeny things that are going to add up through this section. So that's the first thing. It might be that you are literally just being slightly casual coming off the gas. It might be that you don't have a very strong spring in the throttle pedal. I don't know which one it is, but anyway, that's the first thing that I can see. What you'll definitely see, though, is we're braking a little bit earlier than it's possible to brake. So 2307 versus 2318, so only 10 metres or so, but a little bit. And the lift off the throttle begins, at more than that. So 2294 to... Yeah, so the lift off the throttle is, again, there's like a gap between when you're starting to come off the throttle and then we're starting to brake. It's just slightly early. Not very early, just a little bit early. So that's the first bit of time that we can start to gain. Then when you brake, we're braking quite hard. I mean, I'm braking quite hard too, but you're braking a little bit harder than me, but finishing your braking slightly sooner. So you're dropping off here. So this last little bit that I'm doing, this little blue mound of braking, is going to keep a little bit more weight on the nose, which is probably why I'm able to carry... Obviously, this speed trace at the top is where the lap time is going to be derived. Yeah. You can see there's like a 20 kilometre an hour approach to the apex difference. So that's this bit here, obviously, all the area underneath the blue line up to the red line. That total area is our time loss in that little section. And really the rest of the corner, you don't lose very much at all. It's really, the damage is done here. That's the main bit. So what can we... Sorry, go on.
I would say it's on the turn in, so braking and turn in is...
Yes. So let's watch what it looked like in reality and see whether we can actually see anything. But I think probably it's going to be very, very small differences that are more obvious on the data. So let's watch it on board, we'll watch it off board. So your line's looking good. Okay, right, so there's a couple of things here. First of all, I think your positioning's decent here. Let me just move the camera slightly so we can see where we're going. So I think your positioning's good here. You could maybe use a little bit more of the entry curb, just a little bit to open it up, but it's not going to make a big difference. Your line to here is good, but it looks too easy to me. And I'll tell you where else we can see this. When we look at our steering traces here, if I zoom in on your steering trace and my steering trace on the turn-in phase, look at how mine's like a bit wobbly. And that's because I can feel I'm on the limit, I'm having to really precisely make minor corrections on the way to the apex, where yours is a lovely smooth line. And that's because you can make it smooth because the car isn't trying to get away from you. It's slightly too under control. It's a bit too easy because we're doing that 20k less. So those are the giveaways. There's then one other thing you see here. When you make the transition from the right to the left, you go left, straight, left. And if we slow it down, you'll see it. We turn left, we stop turning, and we turn again. There's like that second bite. And the reason that happens, I think, is because you're going that little bit slower, it responds slightly too well. It almost turns better than you expect. And in fact, you can see it here on the steering trace. Left, straight, left, down the bottom. So I do a similar thing, though, interestingly, just after you. But I think that might be opposite lock rather than rather than it going in too well. But we can have a look at that in a minute. But overall, where you're trying to aim, where you're putting the car is good. Your positioning looks good. So I'll tell you what, let's just compare. Let's see if there is any more space on the left here, whether it's something I'm doing. Because I never remember if I'm doing it. I have to prove it to myself. Yeah, I am a little bit. So it's not a lot, but there's a little bit of extra space. And I'm not going up any higher because the curb's a bit steep, but just enough space there. Let's just see what it looks like on the onboard. Yeah, those steering movements I was talking about?
Yeah.
You can really see them now. And I'm not trying to wobble the wheel. I'm just correcting for the stuff that's happening because we're on the limit of braking and as we turn, it's getting nervous. But in slow-mo, you see there's quite a lot going on. It's like turn, correct, turn. It's like really trying to get away. And yeah, so my little second steering input was slightly later, and it's there. It's like a little correction. Let's see what it looks like from the outside, because I think we're giving away a bit of room on this curb too. And I think this curb added to this curb will mean you can carry that bit of extra speed that we're lacking at the moment. And my aim in your next run would be for us to get... You don't need to do the same speed as I did on that one, but maybe 10 kilometers an hour closer, even 5 kilometers an hour closer in that mid-corner as you get to the apex here. That would be a great result. So let's go back with you. So we saw I was definitely well up on that curb. Let's see whether you are. I think that's going to be where... It's these little things that don't look like much, but then they add up. So we know there's a bit of space on the curb here. And there's definitely 2-3 centimetres here, but not a lot. There's not a lot. You're doing quite well on this inside curb. But you can afford for your tyre to just skim the green there. Basically, don't be scared of it. It's fine. But the big deal, as we saw on the data, is definitely the speed. So it's just going to be braking slightly later, braking slightly less hard, but if you need to, carrying the brake slightly longer, this bit here, just to keep the weight on the nose. You probably will need to do that if you go in faster. Sorry, you were going to say something.
Trail braking, basically.
A little bit more trail. Yeah, a little bit more of a trail.
Part.
Yeah, exactly. And what you're doing here, you can see you're starting to pick up the throttle way before me. So at 2390, you're picking up the throttle before you've even got to the apex, look. If you look on the little red dot over here, apex is here. You've already been on the throttle for like 35 meters or something. But that's because you knew you'd overslowed it. Like, whether or not you were thinking it, subconsciously at the very least, you realised we can be going quicker here because that's why you got on the power. So,
Yeah.
And so instead of getting back up to speed, we want to never have left that speed. We want to already be at that speed, because if you're accelerating into the corner, why did you slow it down that much in the first place? If you want to accelerate, you didn't need to slow it down that much. So that's going to be the big change there. But you will obviously need to delay the throttle compared to what you did on that run. So that's it. That's fine. So that's that one. That's the biggest difference, and that is not a massive difference. I still only 2.5 tenths. So it's going to be small things. Now let's look at the next corner. Let's look at this one. So we'll look at this sequence actually. So from here, the entry to this downhill hairpin until, let's say here, where it evens out, we go from 313 down, 415. So it's 1/10. Right, there's 1/10 in that corner. And this is going to be tricky because 1/10 is hard to find in a corner like this. So here's the objective way I would say we can find that 10th. Whether or not this makes it difficult, because it's going to be different from how you're currently doing it, we'll see what happens when you try it. But I would say you can slow down slightly more gradually. You see how you're doing quite a big break and then you're off. So a little bit like the last corner we spoke about, I'm braking longer than you. So there's this period here where I'm going quicker, but I'm still willing to do this little break here and this little break here, just to keep the weight on the nose. But then in the middle, I've got a slower minimum speed, a very definite point there, 100k versus 110. So you're going through that bit a little bit quicker, and you're not really losing out much in terms of speed on the exit because of it. So you're quicker here, slower here, quicker here. And as an average, you'd say, well, surely if you're quicker in two places, and I'm only quicker in one place, surely your way is better. But when we look at the delta, even if we just go from there, so that's 313 to there, you've lost 0.5 to there, even though you were quicker twice. And then as we carry on down the next straight, that gap gets bigger. So the reason is it's not just about the speed, it's also about how far you're travelling. And you can see here, because you go wider on the exit here, you're just covering more meters. And so being the same speed as me, or 1 or 2k slower, it's very, very close, that's great. But if you're going further, obviously you're losing time. And you've got to get all the way over to the right, ready for the next corner, and you don't quite manage it.
That might be the biggest drawback is the transition from left back to right.
Yeah, you've got quite far to get over, and it means you're not in position as long, ready to look into the next corner and set it up and send it in. We haven't looked at the next one yet, but you're right. Like, you're going from right to left, and I'm already on the right and just turning left, so it just makes it a bit easier to guide it through the next corner. So, some advice to change here. If it makes it way worse for you, then I'm willing for us to lose this 10th. Like, if you don't have a month or 3 months to fine-tune this to the very last 100th. So, if you do this and it's just not working because you've got the muscle memory of doing it your way here, it's not the end of the world. You're doing it pretty well. It's just a slightly different technique to me. But what I'd advise is going in slightly shallower, so slightly shorter distance on the way in, but trailing the brakes all the way until that very middle of the corner. So that's your minimum. And you're allowed to let it run slightly wide in the middle. Then you almost have like a second apex here. So it's kind of like apex here, although you're not really running very wide. And then you'll come off the corner a little bit tighter because you've got this slower minimum where the car is pivoted more in the middle, and then you'll be able to drive off in a slightly straighter line. And you won't have this getting on the gas, having to get off, getting on, getting off, and then at full throttle. Because obviously the other reason why you lose a bit of time on the exit is because you're not able to get to full throttle until quite a lot later than I am there, because the angle the car's at. So let's get to that corner and look at it, just so we can see. So yeah, quite a late arc in. So we're turning in relatively late. Get to the inside. Yeah, and you just have to delay the throttle. That doesn't look bad at all. Really doesn't look bad. There's just a potential other technique which might be a tiny bit quicker. But you're right. It's this bit here where look at the distance you've got to go to get back over there. It's just quite far. And you never get there. You didn't get there in time. You had to abort that transition and just get it in slightly. You had to kind of get to here and go. Having said that, by the end you did get all the way out to this curb, but there was no time really where the car was straight. It was like right left. It was like immediately in. It's just harder. It's harder to nail that one.
Yeah, and actually, I think one of the issues might be also the car doesn't get a chance to stabilize.
Yeah.
So it's very hard to get a feel for the both turn in and traction because it's always on limits, either in the left corner or right corner.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and there's like a kind of pendulum effect, isn't there? When you're going right to left, it's that little bit of extra pendulum. This is what it looked like from my point of view. So we're quite similar out here. I have definitely gone in a little earlier. You can see the dark line on the track, how I'm kind of crossing it a little earlier. That's the first apex. Blend a little bit wide. That's the second apex there. And I'm back to full throttle already. So full throttle actually from here. Because the angle...
corner, almost.
Yeah, because the angle... I know I've got the room to do it. And I'm starting from a lower speed. And then with very little work, we're already here, ready on the curb. Look how long I'm on the curb for. So it's kind of straight, straight, straight in. And it just lets me really pick that line into there slightly easier. That's all. So there we go. That's something to at least bear in mind. But like I said, don't force that change if you end up losing 0.2 because it feels weird. But at least you know there's a potential for a slightly different way of doing that. And maybe the entry and the mid and the transition will add up to enough that it's worth doing. All right, let's look at the next corners. So here. Okay, you're quicker than me through the middle of this next corner. So you go from 423 to 401. You gain 200s there. So you did this corner, despite that transition difference, you did this corner really well. So well done. And I'm pretty sure I saw that you didn't quite clip the apex. So there's even more time. You could have beaten me by even more. Because I'm pretty sure you were like a few centimetres away from the sausage curb at the apex. So let's just get there and see. We're looking at tiny detail. But yeah, you see here, there's a little bit of a gap.
Yeah,
so you could have gone even quicker. But what you did was great. And you using some exit.
So I actually think I won't, in any situation, due to the curve in the hairpin, I won't ever be able to make that apex because of the transition from the left to the right.
Yeah, you can actually see the red is on a tighter line on the approach, and it then tracks a wider line through the middle. It's exactly what you'd expect. So
exactly.
But having said that, you're not far off because you're better than me, so that's good. So let's look at somewhere where you're not better than me, because then maybe we can find time. Right, so Puon. Let's take the start of Puon to the exit and see whether you're better. I think you're very good here. 404, by the time you brake for the next corner, 431. 200s through the whole of Puon. Not really much reason to talk about this. So what we're doing differently is you're slowing down a little earlier, but you're getting back on the power earlier. That's great. It's working. You're getting a really good exit. Your line is decent. It's obviously good enough that you're not getting an off track and you're barely losing anything at all. So I would say let's not really put any focus onto Puon. Try and do it exactly like you did it there. That's great. That's fine by me. If I did more laps and I found a different technique that gained 2 more tenths, then we could talk about it. But in the laps I didn't find a better way of doing it. So you're looking good. So stick with that one. So let's go for somewhere where we can gain some time. This next... My cat's trying to climb on me, so let me push him away. Not at the moment, dude. That's it. You'll tread on the keyboard. This one's actually Mouse. Vader's asleep outside. Outside the room. Like this one should be. Right, so into the next couple of 90-degree corners. So here, this is one of the only places where you've got a lower speed, but you don't really have, apart from this moment just here, you don't really have a section where you're getting a benefit from that lower speed. So like earlier on, we saw, like in Puon, you're slower than me on the entry, but then you're quicker on the exit, so it's worth doing. Here, it's not quite working like that, so this is a place we can gain some time. So you're 4-3-1 here, and as we get to the exit, yeah, so it's a 1/10.5, so this is more than we were looking at through the hairpin, so it's worth doing. And why is it? This is a very similar trend to what we saw earlier in the lap at Lecum, where you're doing a harder brake, and then you've kind of got all the deceleration done, which means you don't have any extra trail braking on here, which means you've got less weight on the nose, and it probably doesn't feel like you can carry any more speed, because it's probably going to try and understeer if you carry... it's only kind of 6 kilometers an hour more, but that 6 kilometers an hour over that distance adds up to some time, and it probably doesn't feel like you can carry anymore because you've got no weight on the nose and it's probably pushing on a little bit. So what we're going to change is just flattening off the very top of that brake so we don't have quite as high a peak brake pressure, but we'll just have a tiny bit of brake pressure left to use up to the apex. So you don't need to have done all of your deceleration by now. You can tell from the fact I make it through the corner all right, that you're able to carry that extra bit of speed up to the apex as long as you're still leaning very, very gently on the brakes. And then obviously I'm able to drive off the corner slightly better because I've actually taken a slightly later apex there. But let's look at what it looks like on the video, and then we'll compare like the positioning. So it's this corner we're talking about. So you've slowed it down. You hit your apex here. Now we can already see that's probably a bit too early, because look at where your natural trajectory is going to be now. Because you're hitting it here, it's like you're going to run wide too early if we carried this on. So what happens? You use the curb. Oh, I got a nice bit of rotation over the curb. And then we ended up there. Okay, so we've ended up basically almost right in the middle of the track. Okay, so let's just try and remember that. I'll go back to my one. I think we've already seen on the GPS on the data, but I'm not going to end up as wide as that, and the speed is going to suddenly go a little bit higher. So here we go. Right, so...
isn't that the two last? I think it's
am I at the wrong corner?
Yeah,
the wrong one. Yeah. Too many 90-degree corners. I better take it the same though. Well spotted. That was on purpose. You passed the test, EJ. Well done. So that's where I'm making my apex. So later on, and as we leave, I'm
at the last part of the green part of the curb.
Yeah, and I'm a lot further right, like a car width maybe further right. And that makes this bit easier, and that's why the extra speed really comes in. So it's that positioning there allows this extra little bit of speed. Let's just zoom out slightly. Yeah,
It's
so
actually very evident on the track trace.
Yeah.
When zooming.
You can see it here, can't you, pretty clearly. It allows a tighter entry to here at a higher speed. So, right, this is a small tweak, but that's going to be the 10th and a bit. That's what it is. So, slightly less hard peak braking into the first part. Only a little bit, though. Don't brake a lot less, just slightly less of a point to the brake. But give yourself the permission to keep braking a little bit as you approach the apex. That's what's going to give you that extra rotation. And slightly later apex, that's all. Then you're going to be able to drive off that corner a bit better. All of these, you've given yourself such a difficult task here, EJ, by already being so fast. Because if you were slow, you'd be finding big chunks and you'd just make a small change and you'd find loads of time. You're just not slow enough for that. You're too good for us to find the big time. But let's look at this final one. Well, we will look at the last corner too, but let's look at this final one. So, same story. Like, you can even see it in the brake trace. So, much higher peak brake. We overslow it on the entry. Then you actually speed back up. Remember, we saw this earlier in the lap. It was Lake You know you're going too slow. So, you then accelerate to the apex, lift a second time, and then go again. If you've watched some of my other videos with my other drivers, you might have heard me talk about this W-shaped deceleration zone that we're trying to avoid. If you have this and this, you know, like two minimum speeds, but only one corner, something's wrong. You know, we should only, we don't need to go slow twice for one corner. So that's something we're going to just iron out. So essentially, we'll brake a little bit later, little tiny bit later, slightly less hard, but for longer. That same thing as the previous 90-degree corner. We're going to just trail the brake up to the apex, and that's what lets you carry the extra speed in, because you've got a bit more weight on the nose. This thing's going to try and push horribly if you do braking and then are fully off the brakes when you still need the thing to turn. If you still need quite significant rotation, you need a bit of weight transfer on the front still. So that's that. And then you can squeeze the power back on. Look, you get to full power earlier than me, but it's because you're coming from that lower speed and you know it's fully under control. So we're going to just try and go through there slightly more with one minimum speed. So we'll guide it down, and the minimum comes there, like just as you arrive at the apex. Probably quite similar to this last one. Let's just go back to that other 90-degree. Where is our minimum here? Just there. Yeah, just as we arrive at the apex. Just before we arrive at the apex of that second one, but obviously you accelerate through that because it opens up. Okay, so that's those. I know we've been talking about loads of things, and all of them require very minute changes. Let's just look at the final corner, see if there's anything there.
I mean, it's basically the same thing I need to do in all of them, though.
That's a good thing. Yeah, at least it's a consistent tweak. That means it is a driving style thing or at least a habit, isn't it, at the moment? Last corner, really good braking trace. Look at your throttle trace, though. Remember what we saw at Lake Coombe? It's taking you 6609. There we go. It's taking you nearly 30 meters to go from full throttle to zero throttle. There's just no need to roll off the throttle like that. We should be like, bam, you know, off one pedal, bam, straight on the other pedal, instantaneously. Because you're basically losing yourself a number of meters of braking distance by doing that. So instead of that, what's mine? So you go 6609 and you start braking at 6625. So there's, yeah, okay, 15 meters or something like that. But you're actually still 50% throttle when the braking starts. That's how slow the brake reduction is. So we'll try and get straight off. And it, like I said, it might well be just your pedal doesn't retract very fast, or it might be your foot. It's one of the two. Whereas you can see mine there, it's like as I lift off the throttle, the brake is like boom. It's like within a couple of meters. So that's one change. That'll buy you braking distance. That'll mean you can get away with slightly later braking without it going deep. But you actually don't, you don't go deep. You manage it fine. So that's obviously, your braking was good. Very similar to what I did in terms of the shape. So why are we slower? We're slower really in this bit here, aren't we? It's just this phase here. Right, okay. Let's zoom in on the, if it lets me. Right, it's this phase here. Okay, but you're getting a much better drive off the corner. So the reason you're slower is because you're deliberately staying right. I'm taking like a diagonal line to the apex. So let's see which is better, because one of them will be better. So let's go from here. So that's where we're both doing the same thing. 826, and by the line, 877. It's only half a tenth. Okay, so not a lot really in that. Your technique is not bad. It's not like you're doing it wrong. You're just doing it different and losing half a tenth. That's all.
Yeah, so we don't have the rest of the...
The rest of the straight. Yeah.
Yeah,
So if we take,
it would be funny to see at the turn one.
Because look, if we take your previous lap and you go to say what do we say, half a tenth there to there, but then here, you're now catching me back up, and by the time we get here, you're talking like 100th or maybe 200th difference. There's no point us trying to change that, because on a different lap, maybe yours is 200ths quicker than mine over that period. It's very, very close between us through there, so let's forget it. So, things we're going to change then. Why are we slightly slower here? I didn't even see this. We're slightly slower through Eau Rouge. I never even saw this bit. And that begins like a gradual loss to here.
So that is probably, that will be turn, I might be turning a bit more through Eau Rouge, basically. That will be my...
yeah, maybe just scrubbing, something like that. We'll look at the steering trace. That's good. Okay, I think that's all like reasonably good. The only thing that I do differently is this bit here I cut more. I just take a shorter distance. But yeah, let's zoom in a little bit and we'll see where. Yeah, you can see on the red line there, I'm just taking like a shorter line.
Yeah.
But it's weird though. It is weird that yours slows down more. Yeah, you're right though. Look, you've got at this phase back. Where are we? Here, you've got. Well, let's go to the peak. Yeah, 26 degrees of steering when I've got 14. I think maybe it's the combination of a little bit more steering angle whilst going up a steep hill really just kills the speed a tiny bit. It's like, it's not even noticeable. Yeah, it's just like here, isn't it? It's not even that noticeable, but I'm releasing it now where you have that extra tweak of steering. Even though I can't see, neither of us can see what's coming, I know that I'm going to go straight basically from here. And I think that just releases the car that little bit more. It's a very small difference, but that's one of those, you're about to try really hard to make up a tenth in a hairpin. Well, that's a tenth just from not steering on a flat out corner. So just see what it looks like from here. So yeah, you can see I've got very little angle on here. And I've already kind of released it. Do I cut a bit more? Yeah, and it's kind of straight there and taking a shorter line. Very, very minor change. Really minor. But, it might be worth something if you can do it. But, yeah, it's This looks worse than it is, really. It's only 1 kilometre an hour different, 2 kilometres an hour. That's why it's hard to see on the video. But that just adds up down the straight, doesn't it? That's all.
Because Camel is such a long straight.
Yeah, and you're full throttle for so long in these F4 cars on an F1 track. So, okay, so our points to try and tweak. Main one is this, isn't it? So we'll just recap because it's been a while since we spoke about it. Main one is a bit later on the brakes for Lecombe, quicker off the throttle everywhere, probably. So probably snap off the gas quicker at the end of every straight. But slightly less hard, but maybe slightly longer braking. Main thing is, use a bit of entry curb here if you can. Just like nibble the edge of the curb. You're already quite good on the apex curb here. You know, we're really, really similar. But you want to arrive there, let's say 10k quicker. That's it. Once the tyres are warm. Not on the outlap, but once the tyres are warm. So don't feel like you have to go dangerously fast into there. We'll just lift it a bit, and you should see a green, you should see a delta go green at the very least, because you're going quicker into there. That's going to delay your throttle, so you won't be able to be getting back on the power into the apex, but that's a good thing, because you'll already be going quicker, so that's fine. This next bit's all pretty good. Then as we go down the hill into the hairpin, if you can, we're going to try a more gradual deceleration, slightly shallower entry, that forces you to go a little wide in the middle, but then you cut back at a nicer angle on the exit and don't run as wide. And that will give you more time to turn into this next one. You're already quick through here, but if you hit the apex curb perfectly, you'll be even quicker than that. Pull on, you're great, so let's not worry about it. This next one, Fanya or whatever we're calling it, similar to what we were saying before, slightly less hard peak pressure, but give yourself the permission to trail up to the apex a bit more, and don't come off the corner as wide if you can help it. Keep it 1 car width further right than you currently are. That will give you the space to send it into the next left a bit quicker, so that will lift this speed here. And then we're going to avoid this W-shaped deceleration for the 90-degree right that leads out onto the back straight section. So we'll just brake less hard and a bit later. And again, trail very gently. We're talking 7% brake pressure and then reducing that up to the apex. But it's enough to put that little weight on the front coupled with the steering angle. But no kind of brake, accelerate, and lift again before you've even got to the apex. That's all we're going to do there. Final corner, we said we're basically good, except just snap off the gas slightly quicker because it will reduce your braking distance. So that's it. Those are the things. This is hard though, EJ. I've said it a few times now, but good luck, man. Mainly what I want to see is the technique shift, even if the lap time doesn't come yet, because the starting point is getting used to a slightly different technique. I think you will gain time into Lecombe though, because it's just 20k difference.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Let's go again. I'm going to drink my coffee. So even on the outlap, you can reduce the steering here and just like free the car up. You don't get an off track unless you're like well over 4 wheels off on the inside, so you can really cut the hell out of it if you need to.
But I often find it a bit unstable.
Yeah, that's fair enough. So even on the outlap there, we had a small green delta, but you're going to get way more on hot tyres. So don't judge the new technique based on how the car feels on these cold tyres, because it's going to be way better after a couple of laps.
I mean, that is also quite a big explanation to why I was able to improve. So the final attempt was it had almost Super Formula Light levels of grip. It seemed like.
Okay, so you got the entry, but we didn't get down to that very definite minimum speed. I think that's why it then lost time on the exit. But you can see the gain on the way in, but remember to keep braking until the car pivots in the middle. So just a little bit of brake.
Yeah.
But there was a good starting point.
I think I'm also maybe a bit too aggressive considering it's only first lap.
Yeah, yeah. Nicely held. That's okay. Don't worry about that because I'm just judging the bits that we're trying to change, and turn one wasn't the corner that we cared about. I care about what the delta looks like as we go through those corners we spoke about. So
Understood.
don't forget to just edge up the entry curb on the left-hand side as you approach Prawn. Just like one tyre width more to the left as this yellow and red curb begins. Just to give yourself a bit more room. Nice. That's exactly what we're talking about, EJ. Good man.
Oh, that was too much. Far too much.
So that one, you did quite a wide entry, so you didn't get the benefit of the short distance on the way in. You're still up in this sector, though, so that's good. I'm going to just... don't worry about that off track. I'll get rid of that. You can carry on. Yeah, nice purple sector back there. That's good.
A bit early on power.
Yeah, I think you actually entered that right-hander really well and then just got on the power too soon, that's all. Because you're used to going into there a bit slower, so you normally can get away with that, but you can't now. I think your entry speed was actually very good. Good start. Really good start. So do the same as you did last time, where you put one tyre up on the entry curve, because it really looked like it hooked up well and gave you a nice angle into this apex. Okay, so we might have just got in slightly too hot that time, but you've got to practice it enough times until it feels comfortable. So go a little bit earlier into the hairpin this time, like a shorter line in. And then we get the minimum speed in the middle.
Yeah, so I think my issue is right now I might be using a little too little brake force on the trail braking,
Yep,
actually.
okay.
So it's making me understeer.
Yeah, we'll take a look at that on the data after. But you're right; it's difficult to get used to that until you get used to it. You have to just practice. So
Too late in turning.
that was more like it on with the patience on the throttle.
Yeah, I did have a double tap.
Okay. Okay.
We'll do one more. This is the good lap now.
Yeah, let's keep going. Let's keep going. Well controlled, as you probably already know, but you went in pretty early for turn 1 that time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think just a teeny bit more trail brake as you approach the apex, because the entry looks really good. Like as you're heading towards the apex, I'm going to watch it back on the replay. Keep going though, EJ. Do as long as you've got time. Do another lap after this one because I've got time. I'm just watching your mid-corner speed because I can compare it before I see the data. So we arrive at the apex at like 148. And what am I doing? Yeah, so you're now arriving at the Lakeum apex 8 kilometers an hour quicker than I am. So that's probably why it's understeering wide there. So you've gone just a little bit too far the other direction. You're now just going a bit faster than you need to at the last moment there. But your early braking looks good. It's just like the end of the braking phase. Because you're going quicker, you need a bit more than your foot is used to doing.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's basically I need to find a, get my muscle memory toned into where my trail braking pressure is at.
Yeah, and the problem is, because it's such a bloody long track, you've got 2.5 minutes between every time you do that corner. So it's quite hard to practice it. You've got to do quite a lot of running.
Yeah,
I'm interested to see, I want to see how quick your throttle reduction is on the next bit of data. I want to see whether it's still like rolling off or if it's now like snapping off quickly. Let's do another one.
My initial thinking is that it still has a rolling off.
Okay. Good first corner. Let's go.
Yeah, it felt good.
There we go. Lovely. Lovely. Look at that. Delta, EJ. Yes. I know the exit wasn't the cleanest ever, but geez, the first part was amazing. So we can talk about that separately. Hey, nice. Nice job, man. I still think we want to apex later there, but that's fine. You're quicker on the exit than you were before, so... You've definitely improved so many corners here. With very little practice as well. Think of what you could do with like another hour of aiming at this, and we'll talk about the data at the end of this lap anyway. But this is great.
I mean, it have a feel. I could feel the improvement through the corners, basically. So it's a bit of over eagerness on the exit.
Don't worry that screwed up. Still finish the lap because I want your data, so I'm going to clear that penalty. I've already seen you do the last corner well, so I don't really care. So let's bank that piece of data. So if you just hop out of the cockpit. I know the lap time isn't as quick because obviously the last corner didn't go well, but I don't care because that isn't what we were focusing on. So let's look at the other corners and compare that to your previous run. But well done, man. In a very short period of time, you started to break your muscle memory habit, and it just needs more time to really nail it. Yeah, a couple of purple sectors there. Let's add that in. Final corner is going to look funny on the data here. Right, let's make this one bright green so you can see the comparison. And let's zoom in on some stuff. Right, so you're now better through Eau Rouge. That's good. Like, you can see...
There's still time, but yeah,
it's so tiny though. Like, it's now 1 kilometre an hour, not 2 at the peak, and so yeah, that's tiny. Here's where we care. This is the bit we cared. So we know the exit went to shit, and that's what you can see here. But look how good this bit was by comparison. So the first bit from here to here, you're now very close to what I would call ideal. The difference is, because you're not used to arriving there that fast, you then ended up actually going too quick into the next bit. And that then put you... You can see you were way faster than me here, which was probably too fast because that meant you went wide here. So if we just zoom in, you know, you can feel that. You can see the green line. The green line looks awesome. And then it's almost like, this is great. Oh, shit. It's gone too wide. But the bit we care about is here to here. That's the bit we're trying to fix. So... Good job.
So one thing I'm actually noticing is if you look at the throttle trace on turn-in, that is almost identical.
Yeah, it's only very slightly different. It's later coming off, but yeah, it's still not like it's still not almost vertical like we want it to be. So
one thing I've actually considered is that I might need to do some readjustment on my pedal positions.
Okay.
So I have to flex my foot quite a bit. For it to stay in a neutral position, and if I rearrange the pedals, I might be able to use the straighten my foot in order to be on beat, and I can probably gain some time on that. So I'll try and move my pedals a bit.
Okay, cool. That sounds good. So let's just talk about why it went wrong here specifically and how you can fix that. Because next time you nail that entry, I want you to also nail the next bit. It's basically because you got on the power here in the middle. You see, between here and here, like the rotation phase of the left-hander. So basically like here to here, essentially. I'm not touching the throttle because I know if I touch the throttle, I'll end up out here like you did. I don't want to go there. So you just have to now accept the fact you've made up the time already. You've already gained time by doing the first bit really well. So you have to just now be careful in the next bit. Like, you've done the good bit. Now keep the speed like you did before through the left-hander. So just be patient. Then when you get to full throttle, you'll be able to nail it. Look how I'm at full throttle here, and it stays there all the way down to the braking for the hairpin. Whereas because you're wide, you're having to lift to get into the next one. So that's the next bit. We've basically moved the problem on, but you can deal with that separately. Like, that's an easy to fix problem. The much harder bit is what was going on here. So if you can sort your pedals out, that's one little bit of additional braking distance you're going to get. And yeah, you've nailed the entry here. You know what to do through the next bit. Just basically don't get on the gas because you're already going quick. So be careful in that bit. Right, then let's have a look at the hairpin. Sorry, go on.
If you look at the previous attempt, the red line, I'm pretty certain I also have carry some throttle through
Yep.
at the same point
Yep. You do.
because that was needed in that drive
Yep.
to carry speed through.
And
So
now
it's
it's
just
not.
yeah,
Because
exactly.
you're
So
doing like 7 or 8k higher speed there, so you just don't need it. So you're on the limit now, whereas before you were under the limit, accelerating up to the limit. So right, hairpin. So look at this. You've done that little rotation point here. Now I'm not sure whether you overall gained time here. Did we gain time? Maybe a bit, but we haven't nailed it quite yet because you've currently still got a bit of a combination of my technique and your technique, which probably means it's not giving you the maximum benefit. You're getting down to that nice minimum speed at basically exactly the right point, but there's this phase here where we're still a little slow on the entry. Like here, yeah, here to here. Just as you're approaching the apex, we've still probably braked too hard. Look at your braking shape. It's basically identical to what it was before. And although you have this little touch of the trail brake there, because you've already scrubbed off all the speed up here, you don't need as much trail braking, and therefore you've got less weight on the nose. So you can afford to go in that little bit more less aggressively on the brakes, essentially. Roll on in, but keep braking until then. Instead of big brake, nothing, tiny brake there. So that's what would tweak it. Having said all that, the next bit, you did manage to get out of the corner on a much better line, so that's really good. And you managed to go through here even quicker than before. So, good job, man. Like, I know we went slightly wide probably on the exit, so you lost a little bit on the exit, but that's a big chunk quicker through the middle. Like, bloody good. What does it look like on the map here? So it's still not right up to the sausage curve, so there's still more potential to go even tighter. But even so, you were quick through the middle. You basically do not need to try and go any faster through that apex, because you're already fast through the apex of that corner. So if anything, wind that back to where you were before slightly, so you don't have to delay your throttle application here. You knew you were going a bit quick because you can see it here on your delayed throttle. You were like, oh, I'll wait until now. So I'm not going to run too wide. But you're good through that corner anyway. The main thing is you're good. Pull you're already good through. And then we got this bit. This was our next thing we were working on. So interestingly, this is quite different. This is pretty different to what we saw before. Your braking shape is still the same as before, so we're not really trailing any more in, but just the line is better now. So you're tighter here, you're staying to the right a bit more here, so that's good, and that is allowing you this really lovely phase here to here, where you actually gain back a bit of time. So you're quite quick through. Ah, that's why. Okay, okay. I remember. Yes. I was like, wow, how is he managing to be that much quicker through here? It's because that happened afterwards. That's why. Okay, so that was maybe a little bit too much, a little bit too high speed. You were full throttle at this point, where I have quite a big lift and then back on. I lift just at the point it needs to rotate and then back on. So you can afford to just get the car rotated in that little phase there on the way in. But you know, you were trying stuff, and your line was better. The thing we need to tweak now is that good line whilst also carrying speed up to the inside.
Exactly.
Because
so the line is allowed because I have a lower speed.
Yeah.
Basically,
You're right. There to there is a bit of time loss, isn't it? Or it's the beginning of a time loss. So it felt like we were apexing a little early still. I'm going to go to that corner here. Let's have a look. No, not really. On this lap, not really. But you were very accurate, I think, because the speed was low. Maybe it's a little bit early. Yeah, maybe it's a little early. We have to ride the curb, and then we kind of fall off the curb. But because of your lower speed, you're able to stay there. So, yeah, you get on just before this green. Yeah, so we're kind of... Both tyres are up the curb by the green. You start before...
I need to hit at the last third or something of the green part, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, you're right. So, yeah, so that's probably also why you're tempted to slow it down too much, because on the line you're intending to do, you have to slow it down a bit because you're going to run wide otherwise because of that early apex. So yeah, there we go. You're right. So it was quite an early apex because you're already on there, aren't you? Like starting to get on there, and I'm waiting until there. So, okay, that's fine. We know. That'll make this bit, you'll kind of be dragged in at that slightly higher speed into there. And then you won't need to go full throttle through this bit and go off on the gravel.
No.
Okay, then this next one. Right, you've basically got rid of that W shape to a greater or lesser degree, and you're getting a great exit now. So there's still potential to go in faster, but what you're not doing is doing a really low minimum speed and another really low minimum speed. You're like carefully getting it lined up and then getting a really good exit. What we now need you to do is be slightly less careful on the way into here. It's a little bit too careful on the way in. I think partly it's because you were so wide here, you didn't have much time to plan it. You know, you were still getting across the track, weren't you, at that point?
Probably. Although I will have a lower speed from the previous corner due to the runoff.
Yeah. Well, actually, having said that though, like here, you're only 1 kilometre an hour slower than me, so
okay.
it's not much in it. It's very, very close. Let's get to that corner. I know it's quite far into the lap. But you've definitely made a change. So, yeah, you just kept your foot in. You were just like, whap, 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 across the gravel. So you didn't really lose much time. Or didn't lose much speed, at least. Yeah, look at the angle you're at as you're right. You're still aiming at the curb. So I think that probably tempted you to slow a bit more there than you might have done. So on an ideal lap, hopefully you'd naturally be slightly closer. Hey, your throttle was sharper there. Look, that's a sharper drop. It's halfway there, isn't it? Before you were like gradual. Now it's like a bit more of a bam. So that's good. But yeah, there's still a little potential there to just head to the apex faster. Not a lot faster, but a little bit. It's going to be slightly later braking mainly. Because actually, if you look at how steep your deceleration curve is on the speed line up here, it's quite a similar shape to mine.
Yeah.
Until you then come off the brakes here. You finish braking early because you know you're going too slow, and then obviously your deceleration is more shallow. But if you can just move the braking point later, just move your little mountain shaped here to like here, then you'll be following my deceleration and you'll still make the corner fine. Okay, so slightly later braking there. And final corner we don't even need to worry about because you just locked up. But yeah, look how fast you went in, and it just couldn't quite make it. Yeah, you were still 39% throttle at the point where I was already braking, and yeah, it was very brave of you, but it didn't work. So let's just make some notes on the lap just to refer back to. So we're now, sorry for my slow typing.
No worries.
We're now basically there with Rouge, so I don't think we need to worry about that. Like, you're basically there. I know I've put that slightly too early there. This is going to still be some of the focus, but let's just pop a note here. Massive improvement on entry, on early entry. Throttle reduction can still be sharper, but you know that. But on this lap, you were tempted to reapply throttle a little too early for this new increased speed that you've got now. So that's obviously that little bit there. So we need to keep this, but just stay off the gas as it rotates in the left-hander. That'll just fix that whole thing, and then you'll just have the best of both worlds. Like you knew, you didn't even need me to say any of that. It's just that's where the difference is, and then you'll get 0.3 here and keep it. Right into the hairpin. Yeah, this is the tricky one. This is tricky because it's such a different way that you were doing it before. But if this is, I'm going to put a little caveat here. This is if you want to try and do the way I'm doing it. It's not worth massive amount of time. I think it is worth some time, especially if I maximise it myself. I probably didn't do it perfectly on this lap, but it's a 10th at least, I think. But the main thing is we don't want to over slow it. Try not to have the car already slowed before the final approach to the apex, as the this will allow you to maintain a slight trail. Well, I'll say trail brake, and that equals higher entry speed and more weight on the nose when you need it.
Well, also
But-
I don't know how about the shallowness of corner entry. So
Yeah, you're halfway there on this one.
yeah.
But you almost went, because you've slowed it there, because you've got
Yeah.
that 10k or whatever it is, 8k slower speed. It's actually allowing you to get to the inside too soon. You see how you kind of cross over my blue line. You're wider here, and then you cross over, and suddenly you're at the apex earlier than I would want to be at the apex, and that then makes it harder to stay tight at this bit, and you cross back over and go wider just there. So it's kind of like, it's all stems from that. Going a bit too slow makes it too easy to turn. So the cure is that kind of, just don't brake quite as hard here on the peak. That'll then mean you'll keep braking a little longer, you'll arrive at the apex slightly later, you'll pivot slightly later, then you'll drive off the corner slightly tighter. But it's such small margins. But you know, you definitely went in that direction. That minimum speed there is really good. This one, we are now probably slightly too fast into, I think it's called Speaker's Corner or whatever it's called, or no
Yeah,
name,
no
or
name.
whatever. Yeah, no name. Chris calls it Speaker's Corner.
He would be very agitated if we call it no name.
Yeah. Use a little more apex curb, because there's still like, you know, half a tyre or a tyre width up to the sausage curb. And yeah, where you're kind of carrying this throttle in, we just think we want to be off it, if anything. I'm braking, but you're quicker than me through there, so that's fine. Poo-on's good. I'm just going to give you a tick. It wasn't the best on that particular lap, but on a good lap, you nail Poo-on. How the hell do you spell Poo-on? This corner. There we go.
I think it's Pouhon.
H-O-N. Yeah, that sounds right. And then this section, right? So similar deal here, like really similar deal. You're recognizing this bit of the speed trace. This is a familiar entry speed trace. So less braking intensity on the approach to the apex. And in this corner in particular, also attempt a later apex.
Exactly.
That'll then just help the next bit, and you'll be on the right line, you won't go on the gravel, etc. And this is an improvement, but basically just slightly later braking. This is definitely a big, I can't spell, there we go, in the right direction. And we weren't looking for much of a step anyway. The W is largely gone, but we can now brake a bit later, and again with less intensity. You can see how sharp the spike is on the brake there. Less peak intensity, which means there's still some trail braking. Closer to the apex. It's a really, really similar thing. You can kind of see sharp brake off as opposed to shallow, less brake, but there's still brake, and the speed is helped because of it. And then final corner, on a good lap, it's great. That's it. Nothing really to add there. Just don't try and brake crazy late like on that one.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, considering how long the lap is, you've only got very small things to focus on. You've done a really good job there. I'm going to stop the recording so it doesn't run out of... Oh, I can't because I've not got a mouse plugged into that PC at the moment. Okay, I'll do that in a minute. I'll stop the recording in a minute. You're going to have like an ending bit where I'm fiddling with a mouse. But that was really good, EJ. Good job, man. Do you want to... Should we schedule the next one before your next race?
Actually, yeah, I'm running a bit late for a meeting.
Okay, you go. Sorry, I've taken too long. So go for that. We can talk about the next one before that time. Just message me.
Great. It was
good.
Very helpful. So yeah, I'll just shoot you a DM on the next one.
Sweet. Sorry for making you late for a meeting. Go do it.
No worries.
Have a good afternoon.
Yeah, you too. Bye.
Thanks, man. Bye. Oh, it's gone dark outside. Okie dokie. Let's stop the